Hello, friends. Before starting the reading of the NCERT line by line, I would like to say that please, आपने अगर सब्सक्राइब नहीं किया तो प्लीज सब्सक्राइब कर दो मेरे चैनल को and click on that bell icon also so that notification आपके पास सबसे पहले पहुंचे. And let's begin the reading of this chapter. Chapter 11: Buildings, Paintings, and Books. The Iron Pillar. The Iron Pillar at Meherali, Delhi is a remarkable example of the scale of Indian craft persons. It is made of iron 7.2 meter high and weighs over 3 tons. It was made about 1500 years ago. We know the date because there is an inscription on the pillar mentioned a ruler named Chandra, who probably belonged to Gupta dynasty. What is amazing is the fact that the pillar has not rusted in all these years. Buildings in bricks and stone. The skills of our craft persons are also apparent in the buildings that have survived, such as stupas. The word stupa means a mound. While there are several kinds of stupas, round and tall, big and small, these have certain common features. Generally, there is a small box placed at the center or heart of the stupa. This may contain bodily remains such as teeth, bones, and ashes of Buddha or his followers, or things they use, as well as precious stones and coins. This box, known as relic casket, was covered with earth. Later, a layer of mud brick or baked brick was added on top, and then the dome-like structure was sometimes covered with carved stone slabs. Often, a path known as Pradakshina Patha was laid around the stupa. This was surrounded with railings. Entrance to the path was through gateways. Devotees walked around the stupa in a clockwise direction as a mark of devotion. Both railings and gateways were often decorated with sculptures. This was a place where a magnificent stupa once existed. Many of the stone carving for decorating the stupa was made about 2000 years ago. Other buildings were hollowed out of the rock to make artificial caves. Some of these were very elaborately decorated with sculptures and painted walls. Some of the earliest Hindu temples were also built at this time. Deities such as Vishnu, Shiva, and Durga were worshipped in these shrines. The most important part of the temple was the room known as Garbhagriha, where the image of the chief deity was placed. It was here that the priests performed religious rituals and devotees offered the worship to the deities. Often, as at Bhitargaon, a tower known as Shikhara was built on the top of Garbhagriha to mark this out as sacred place. Building shikaras required careful planning. Most temples also had a space known as Mandapa. It was a hall where people could assemble. Some of the finest stone temples were built in these towns. Some of these are shown here. How were stupas and temples built? There were several stages in building a stupa or a temple. Usually, a king or a queen decided to build these at it as it was an expensive affair. First, a good quality stone had to be found, quarried, and transported to the place that was often carefully chosen for the new building. Here, these rough blocks of the stones had to be shaped and carved into pillars and panels of walls, floors, and ceilings, and then these had to be placed in precisely the right position. Kings and queens probably spent money from their treasury to pay the craftspersons who worked to build these splendid structures. Besides, when devotees came to visit the temple of the stupa, they often brought kits which were used to decorate the buildings. For example, an association of ivory workers paid for one of the beautiful gateways at Sachi. Amongst the other who paid for decoration were merchants, farmers, garlands makers, perfumers, smiths, and hundreds of men and women who are known only by their names, which were inscribed on pillars, railings, and walls. So, when you get a chance to visit any of these buildings, remember how several hundreds of people probably worked to construct and decorate them. Paintings from Ajanta on map 7. This is a place where several caves were hollowed out of the hills over centuries. Most of these were monasteries of Buddhist monks, and some of them were decorated for painting. Here are some examples. As the cave are dark inside, most of these paintings were done in light of the torches. The colors, which are vivid even after 1500 years were made of the plants and minerals. The artist, the artist who created these splendid works of the art remain unknown. The world of books. Some of the best known epics were written during this period. Epics are grand long compositions about heroic men and women and include stories about gods. A famous Tamil epic, Padikaram, was composed by a poet named Ilango around 1800 years ago. It is the story of a merchant named Kovalin who lived in Puhar and fell in love with a courtesan named Madhavi, neglecting his wife Kanagi. Later, he and Kanagi left Puhar and went to Madurai, where he was wrongly accused of a theft by the court jeweler of the Pandya king. The king sentenced Kovalin to death. Kanagi, who still loved him, was full of grief and anger at this injustice and destroyed the entire city of Madurai. The description of Shilabdikaram. Here is how the poet describes Kanagi's grief. O witness of my grief, you cannot console me. Is it right that your body, fairer than pure gold, lies unwashed here in the dust? Is it just that, in the red glow of the twilight, your handsome chest, framed with the flowers, red, lies thrown down? Sorry, lies thrown down on the bare earth, while I remain alone, helpless, and abandoned to despair. Is there no God? Is there no God in this country? Can there be a God in the land where the swords of the king is used for the murder of innocent strangers? Is there no God? No God? Another Tamil epic, the Manimekaliya, was composed by Satanar around 1400 years ago. This describes the story of a daughter, Kovalin and Madhu. These beautiful compositions were lost to scholars for many centuries, till their manuscripts were rediscovered about 100 years ago. Other writers such as Kalidas, about whom you read in chapter 10, wrote in Sanskrit verses from Meghduta. Here is a verse from Kalidasa's best known poem, the Meghduta, in which a monsoon cloud is imagined to be a messenger between the lovers who are separated from one another. See how the poet describes the breeze that were carried the cloud northwards. A cool breeze, delightful as it is touched with the fragrance of the earth, sown by the showers, inhaled deeply by elephants, and causing the wild figs to ripen, will blow gently as you go. Recordings and preserving old stories. A number of Hindu religious stories that were in circulation earlier were written down around the same time. This includes the Puranas. Purana literally means old. Puranas contain stories about god and goddesses, such as the Vishnu, Shiva, Durga, and Parvati. They also contain details on how they were to be worshipped. Besides, are the account about the creation of the world and about kings. The Puranas were written in simple Sanskrit words and were meant to be heard by everyone, including women and Sudras, who were not allowed to study the Vedas. They were probably recited in the temples where the priests and people came to listen to them. Two Sanskrit epics, Mahabharata and Ramayana, had been popular for a long time. Some of you may be familiar with these stories. The Mahabharata is about a war fought between Kauravas and Pandavas, who were cousins. This was a war to gain the control of the throne of the Kurus and their capital, Hastinapur. The story itself was an old one, but was written down in the form of which it is known today, about 1500 years ago. Both Puranas and Mahabharata are supposed to have been compiled by Vyasa. The Bhagavad Gita, about which you learned in chapter 9, was also included in Mahabharata. The Ramayana is about Rama, a prince of Koshala, who was sent to exile. His wife Sita was abducted by the king of Lanka named Ravan. The Ravan had to fight a battle to get her back. The Rama had to fight a battle to get her back. He won and returned to Ayodhya, the capital of Kashal, after his victory. Like the Mahabharata, this was the whole story that was now written down. Valmiki, recognized as the author of the Sanskrit Ramayana. There are several versions, many of which performed of the Mahabharata and Ramayana, popular more amongst the people in different parts of subcontinent. Stories told by the ordinary people. Ordinary people also told stories, composed poems and songs, sang, danced, and performed plays. Some of these are preserved in collections of stories such as Jatakas and Panchatantra, which were written down around this time. Stories from Jatakas were often shown on railing of stupas and in paintings in the places such as Ajanta. Here is one such story. The story of Monkey King. Once upon a time, there was a great monkey king who lived on banks of Ganga in Himalaya with 80,000 followers. They fed on the fruit of the special mango tree, which were very sweet. Such exquisite mangoes did not grow on the plants. One day, a ripe mango fell into the river and floated all the way to Varanasi. There the king of city, who was bathing in the river, found it and amazed when he tasted it. He asked the foresters of his kingdom whether they could find a tree for him, and they led him all the way to Himalayas. There the king and his courtiers had their fill of mangoes. At night, the king discovered that the monkeys were also feasting on the fruit and decided to kill them. However, the king of the monkeys worked out a plan to save his followers. He broke off branches of the mango tree and tied them to form a bridge across the river and held onto one end till all his followers crossed it. Exhausted with their food, he fell down and lay dying. The human king saw what had happened and tried unsuccessfully to revive the monkey. When he died, the king bowed his head and paid him full respect. The story is shown on a piece of sculpture found from the stupa of Barhut in the central India. Can you identify which part of the story are shown in the sculpture? Why do you think they are chosen? Writing books on science. This was also the time of when Aryabhatta, a mathematician and astronomer, wrote a book in Sanskrit known as Aryabhatiyam. He stated that day and night were caused by rotation of the earth on its axis, even though it seems as if the sun is rising and setting every day. He developed a scientific explanation for eclipses as well. He also found the way of calculating the circumference of circle, which is nearly as accurate as a formula as we today use today. Varamira, Brahmagupta, and Bhaskaracharya were some other mathematicians and astronomers who made several discoveries. Try and find out more of them. Zero. While numerals have been used earlier, mathematicians in India now invented a special symbol for zero. This system of counting was adopted by Arabs and then spread to Europe, and it continues to be in use throughout the world. The Roman used a system of counting without using zero. Ayurveda. Ayurveda is a well-known system of health science that was developed in ancient India. The two famous practitioners of Ayurveda in ancient India were Charka and Chushitra. Charka Shamhita, written by Charka, is a remarkable book on medicine. In his treatise Shastruta Samhita, Shastruta speaks about elaborate surgical procedure. Elsewhere, paper has become a part of our daily lives. The books we read are printed on papers and we use paper for writing. Paper was invented in China about 1900 years ago by a man named as Kai Lun. He beat plant fibers, cloth ropes, and bark of trees, soaked these in the water, and then pressed, drained, and dried the pulp to create paper. Even today, handmade paper is made through the similar process. The techniques of making the paper was closely guarded secret for the centuries. It reached to the Korea about 1400 years ago and spread to Japan soon after. It was known in Baghdad about 1800 years ago. From Baghdad, it spread to Europe, Africa, and other parts of Asia, including the subcontinents. So, friends, here we have completed the last chapter of class 6, that is chapter 11. And you know what you have to do? You have to like, you have to share as much as you can, and you have to subscribe to my channel. And if you have any problem, any doubt, or anything that you want to suggest to me, then comment it below in this comment section. And thank you so much for watching this video till the end, and hope so you will be attending the next videos also that I will be posting, that I will be uploading on the YouTube. Thank you so much.